It was the coldest week in Detroit, and Marcus Alvarez had only one coat to his name. The sleeves were torn, the zipper jammed halfway, but it was the only thing keeping the wind off his chest. That morning, hunger won over warmth. He sold the coat for a few dollars at a second-hand shop and stepped back into the snow in just a thin hoodie. His stomach ached as he walked to the corner bakery. He laid his coins on the counter. The shopkeeper didn't touch them. He just stared, as if testing something Marcus couldn't understand. Marcus felt every eye in the bakery on him. He lowered his gaze, embarrassed by the shivering in his hands. The shopkeeper finally slid half a loaf across the counter, smaller than what Marcus expected. The coins remained untouched on the wood. Confused, Marcus hesitated, but hunger pushed him to take it. As he left, he wondered why the man had given less bread than he could afford. Outside, the freezing wind bit at his arms, and he thought about the coat he no longer had. Survival suddenly felt like a losing game. He wasn't prepared to play. Back at his small rented room near campus, Marcus nibbled at the bread slowly, trying to stretch it for days. The radiator barely worked, and the thin walls let in every sound from the street. His textbook sat open, but the words blurred with exhaustion. He thought about the shopkeeper's eyes, sharp, unreadable. It felt less like pity and more like a judgment. Marcus wondered if the man saw weakness in him, if that was why he had been shorted. That night, lying awake without a coat, he felt the cruel balance between hunger and shame tightening around him. Over the next few days, Marcus returned to the bakery, desperate for food. Each time the shopkeeper gave him only a small portion, never the full amount his coins could cover. The students at school whispered about Marcus's ragged clothes, mocking how thin he looked. Some said the bakery owner was a strange man who liked to test people. Marcus hated the way that sounded. It made him feel like an insect under glass. Still, when his stomach growled too loudly to think, he found himself back at the same counter, taking whatever bread was offered. One afternoon, Marcus tried to earn money by shoveling snow outside a gas station. His hands blistered, his back ached, but when he asked for payment, the owner dismissed him with a shrug. Marcus walked away empty-handed, snow still caked in his sleeves. That night he returned to the bakery, coins clinking like proof of effort. The shopkeeper again slid only half a loaf. Marcus clenched his jaw, wanting to argue, but the hunger silenced him. He walked out quickly, ashamed of himself. Each bite of bread tasted less like relief and more like defeat in slow motion. As the semester dragged on, Marcus fell behind in classes. His professors noticed his pale face, the way he drifted during lectures. His classmates didn't care. They whispered and laughed when his stomach growled in the quiet. The bakery loomed in his mind as both torment and necessity. Every trip there felt like stepping into a trap. The old man behind the counter never spoke, just measured him with those piercing eyes. Marcus began to wonder if this was cruelty disguised as kindness or some cruel game. He hated himself for still returning, yet he always did. Marcus started skipping meals to avoid the humiliation. He drank water to calm the hunger pains and studied late into the night, but his body weakened, and his concentration slipped. One evening, after trudging through the snow with numb hands, he collapsed on his bed with his notes scattered around him. He thought about home, but there was no family left to call. He thought about his future, but it felt like a door locked from the inside. The bakery's half-loaves haunted him. They were never enough, and yet they were all he had left. Desperate, Marcus searched for odd jobs around campus. He carried boxes, cleaned classrooms, even graded papers for a professor who paid him in coffee instead of cash. Each effort left him more drained and still short on money. The hunger sharpened his frustration. When he walked past the bakery, the warm air from the doorway felt like a mockery. He pushed himself to step inside anyway. The shopkeeper watched silently, then placed the same half-loaf before him. Marcus's coins went untouched again. He left with burning anger in his chest, feeling used and belittled all over again. By now, Marcus's classmates noticed how frail he looked. Some teased him, whispering about his cheap meals and calling him weak. Their laughter cut deeper than the cold. He tried to ignore it, burying himself in study, but even his notes began to blur. When he passed mirrors, he barely recognized himself. Thin, tired eyes, clothes that hung too loose. His pride fought with desperation every day. The bakery became his lifeline, and his humiliation at the same time. The shopkeeper's quiet gaze lingered in his mind. Marcus couldn't tell if the man saw potential in him or failure. One evening after class, Marcus nearly fainted in the library. A kind janitor offered him water, but the embarrassment burned worse than the hunger. He dragged himself back to the bakery, clutching his coins. Again, the shopkeeper gave only part of a loaf. Marcus's patience finally cracked. He slammed the bread on the counter and asked, in a trembling voice, why he was being treated like this. The shopkeeper didn't respond. He just watched Marcus quietly. That silence was worse than any insult. Marcus stormed out into the snow, angry at the old man, angry at himself, and utterly alone. That night, Marcus stayed awake, replaying the scene in his head. He thought about every time he had lowered his eyes, every time he had walked away with less than he deserved. The anger turned inward. Maybe the man was right. Maybe he was weak, pathetic even. He hated himself for always coming back. He vowed never to set foot in that bakery again. Yet his stomach growled so loudly, it drowned out his resolve. As dawn broke, Marcus realized he had no other options. The humiliation was unbearable, but the alternative was worse. He needed bread to survive. Marcus returned reluctantly the next morning. The shopkeeper placed the same small portion before him, as if nothing had changed. This time Marcus said nothing. He took the bread, stuffed it into his bag, and walked out. Snowflakes swirled around him, sticking to his hoodie. He thought about how easily people with money walked into stores, buying food without hesitation. For him, every visit was a reminder of his place. He wondered how long he could last like this, measuring out bites like coins, one crumb at a time. Each day stretched thinner than the last. Exams loomed, but Marcus could barely focus. His notes blurred, his head throbbed. His classmates' laughter rang in his ears whenever he stumbled over an answer. One night in class, he nearly collapsed, catching himself on the desk at the last second. His professor frowned, but said nothing. Marcus walked home through freezing streets, clutching his bag tightly. He hated the bakery more than ever, but he knew tomorrow he would return. It wasn't bread anymore. It was survival. And every survival felt like surrender. He couldn't escape the feeling that someone was watching him fail on purpose. Finally, Marcus's breaking point arrived. After another humiliating trip, he turned back and confronted the shopkeeper. His voice shook with frustration as he accused the man of cruelty. Why give him less than what he paid for? Why make him beg silently every time? His chest tightened with years of swallowed shame spilling out at once. The bakery was empty. The smell of bread hanging heavy in the air. For the first time, Marcus stood tall, forcing the old man to look at him not as a customer, but as a human being desperate to be heard. The shopkeeper didn't flinch. He simply asked Marcus why he kept coming back. The question cut deeper than any insult. Marcus stammered, then admitted the truth. He had no family, no support, and no backup plan. School was his only chance, and without food, even that was slipping away. He confessed he hated himself for being desperate, for always returning even when it hurt. His voice broke, and for a moment the bakery was silent, except for the hum of the ovens. Marcus realized how naked he felt, standing there with no defenses, admitting his failure aloud. That night, Marcus went back to his room and sat in the dark. He replayed the confrontation over and over, wondering if he had made things worse. Shame and relief tangled inside him. At least he had finally said it. But what difference did it make? He felt certain the shopkeeper would never serve him again. Exhausted, he drifted into uneasy sleep, stomach empty, head heavy with doubt. For the first time, he wondered if he should just quit school entirely. The fight seemed pointless. The hunger never ended. The bakery felt like the final wall he could never climb. The next morning, Marcus trudged to the bakery, but the door was locked. A sign read, "Closed for the week." Panic hit him like ice water. Without even the half loaf, what would he do? He wandered the streets, searching for help, but no one offered work. At night, his hunger clawed at him, sharp and merciless. He lay in bed, thinking about the shopkeeper's sharp eyes, wondering if his words had closed the bakery. A strange mix of anger and regret swirled inside him. The one place he hated was also the only place keeping him alive. Desperate, Marcus borrowed money from a classmate. The interest was cruel, but he convinced himself it was temporary. He bought cheap noodles and ate quickly, guilt sticking in his throat. The debt grew like a shadow. Every time he saw the classmate, his stomach twisted. He began avoiding people, ashamed of what he owed. Without the bakery, he was adrift, scrambling from one bad decision to the next. He wondered if he had cursed himself by speaking up. Hunger was painful, but this new debt felt worse, a chain tightening around his neck, dragging him deeper into despair. Marcus started skipping more classes, too weak and distracted to keep up. He told himself he could catch up later, but the truth weighed heavy. His debt grew, his body ached, and his pride shrank. He thought about the bakery often, imagining the warm smell of bread. He remembered the shopkeeper's calm face, the way he seemed to measure every move. Marcus convinced himself he had been a fool to trust the man. Maybe it was all a game. Maybe the shopkeeper had only been toying with him, enjoying the sight of his struggle. The thought stung bitterly. A week later, Marcus found an envelope slipped under his door. His name was written in neat handwriting. Inside was a short note, "Return to the bakery tomorrow." His hands trembled as he read it again and again. Confusion and suspicion churned inside him. Was this another trick? Another humiliation? Part of him wanted to tear it up, but the truth was, he had nowhere else to turn. That night, he lay awake staring at the ceiling, torn between fear and a fragile spark of hope. Morning felt like it might bring either salvation or another cruel blow. When Marcus returned, the bakery door stood open. The shop smelled richer than ever. The shopkeeper was waiting. He motioned Marcus inside and led him to the back. On the wall hung framed photographs, rows of young men and women, all once students like Marcus. The shopkeeper revealed that he was a retired general, once commanding hundreds of soldiers. After leaving the military, he had dedicated his life to testing young people, seeing who could endure hardship with honesty and resilience. The bakery, he explained, was never just about bread. It was about character. Marcus felt his chest tighten. The general sat Marcus down and explained further. The half-loaves had never been about cruelty. They were a way of seeing how Marcus would respond, whether with anger, dishonesty, or dignity. Every choice had been observed. Every return had been noted. Marcus listened, stunned, as the man explained that he had watched countless students break under pressure. Some lied, some stole, some abandoned their goals entirely. Marcus had bent, but he had not broken. His honesty, even in anger, had revealed more strength than he realized. The boy who thought himself weak was not weak at all. The general pulled out a worn leather journal filled with names and stories. Each entry belonged to someone who had stood where Marcus stood now, students who had faced the same trials, endured the same tests. Many of them had gone on to succeed in ways they never imagined. Some were doctors, some teachers, some leaders in their communities. Marcus traced the ink with his finger, hardly believing it. For the first time in years, he felt connected to something larger than himself. His struggles weren't just meaningless suffering. They had been steps in a path he couldn't yet see. The general then revealed that Marcus's behavior had set him apart. Even when given less, Marcus had never stolen, never begged, never lashed out at others. He had endured quietly, even at the cost of his own pride. The general explained that such qualities were rare. The world was filled with people who folded quickly under pressure, but Marcus had held on. Marcus sat in stunned silence, realizing that what he had considered weakness might actually have been his strength all along. The old man's eyes, once intimidating, now carried a strange kind of respect that warmed the room. The general told Marcus that the test was over. From this point forward, he would no longer have to worry about bread. He would have the support he needed to continue his education. More than that, he would have mentorship and guidance from someone who understood discipline, resilience, and sacrifice. Marcus felt overwhelmed, unsure how to respond. For weeks he had thought the shopkeeper was punishing him, playing with his hunger. Now he realized every crumb, every glance had been part of something larger. His suffering had been seen, measured, and transformed into something meaningful at last. Weeks later, the general invited Marcus to a gathering at the bakery. The room was filled with former students who had once faced the same trials. Each person shared their story, how they had nearly given up but found strength through the test. Marcus listened, humbled, realizing he was not alone. The bakery had been a crucible for many before him. For the first time, he felt pride stir in his chest. His hunger had not been wasted pain. It had been proof of his endurance. And now, surrounded by others, he felt like he belonged somewhere at last. Marcus stood at the gathering and told his story. He admitted his doubts, his anger, his moments of despair. The others nodded, understanding. The general listened quietly, then placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder, a gesture that carried more weight than words. For the first time, Marcus spoke of his future without fear. He no longer saw himself as a failure, scraping by. He was a student with strength forged in hardship. His classmates' laughter and the cold Detroit nights no longer defined him. He had been tested, and though scarred, he had passed. That realization filled him deeply. As the weeks turned to months, Marcus's life shifted. With support and mentorship, he paid off his debts and focused on his studies. He no longer dreaded the bakery. It had become a symbol of resilience, not shame. The general's sharp eyes now looked at him with pride. Marcus walked into classrooms with his head higher. The weight of humiliation slowly faded, replaced by a steady confidence. The bakery's half-loaves were gone, but Marcus carried their lessons in every step. What once felt like cruelty now stood revealed as a path towards something he had never believed possible. One snowy morning, Marcus walked past the second-hand shop where he had sold his coat. He remembered the hunger, the cold, the shame. He no longer had that coat, but he realized he didn't need it anymore. What he carried now was stronger than fabric. It was belief in himself. The bakery had given him more than food. It had given him a sense of worth he had never known. As snowflakes fell on his shoulders, Marcus smiled. For the first time, he knew he would be okay. His hunger had led him to something far greater than bread.